recording screen?
I can see it's recording.
Okay, perfect. That's all I need. That's all I need. So we're live. We have got a little live audience as well. They want to ask some questions as soon as we go, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. So, really, the thing that I wanted to ask first is for everyone, like, kind of watching, viewing, listening, hopefully subscribing, is how would you describe or kind of like define creative alchemy? Because I know a lot of people don't really know what that is.
It's a basic definition, I'd say, is mixing artistic crafts or
Okay.
techniques. So everybody's got their own soup. It's like, I suppose when you talk to actors that are kind of purist in the lines of they just consider themselves actors and that's their main art form.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own technique, whether it's like Method, Meisner, or old Stanislavski inspired things. But I suppose it's just creative. Also, it's a creative way of saying that you kind of mix lots of things together without putting the term creative practitioner on everything, which has become a little bit of a bandwagon at the moment as well.
Yeah, because I know alchemy is getting a lot more popular since Will Smith, I think it was, said it in the podcast about the Alchemist, the book.
Oh right, no, I'm not. I didn't know this at all. So this is completely new to me. Please.
Yeah, he said it was one of the kind of books that he'd recommend to anybody that was looking for a different path in life. So I think I can't remember the exact quote, but he said the Alchemist had a really big effect on him.
Oh, is that the Paulo, not the Paulo Coelho one?
Possibly, yeah. I think it might have been. I'll have to Google it in a little bit.
For a minute, yeah.
Perfect. So I know you do acting as well. So in terms of an actor, what kind of stuff would I have seen you in, or what are you most known for, would you say?
Oh, well, that's one of those dreaded questions. What am I most known for? I don't know. Not being known would probably be the best way of answering that one. No, I kind of work across all disciplines, but obviously it's a beggar's profession. So wherever you get the work, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mainly live in the theatre or in the theatre and creating theatre, but
Okay.
Not
in an actual theatre, but just.
No, I wish. No, that would be lovely. No, I've only slept in a few theatres.
Yeah.
But yeah, I work primarily in London, but all over the UK. And my second home, I'm only using that term loosely. It's not my second home, but in Italy as well. So I work with a clown partner of mine over in Italy, and we've continued to work for about 4 years, which is a nice blend of styles and examples, because obviously, different coasts that you go to, audiences are different wherever you are. And I think it's safe to say that the appetites in Europe, I think, are very different when it comes to theatre, or I think always kind of have been very different to the way that they understand, appreciate art, the way that they come to it. Whereas I think in London, sometimes it's seen as, it can be seen as too easy to get to. So sometimes it's taken a little bit for granted. And I'd say that both in front and behind the curtain or screen, from both sides.
Okay, amazing. No, I can see that completely. It's very, very different in Europe. Have you seen The Greatest Showman?
I haven't. No, but I have heard about it.
I'd 100% recommend it if you haven't seen it. Watch it over Christmas.
Yeah, it's Christmas viewing. I rarely get time to see many films lately. Just other things have kind of occupied my mind for investigations. Unless it's the BFI player, which I must say is pretty damn amazing at the moment.
Really?
For what it offers. Yeah, when it goes through seasons as well and catalogue old masters and classics. I mean, I put down my Netflix and whatchamacallit. I put down my Netflix. I cancelled my subscription to Netflix and took up BFI because there's a world more interest with the flavors that are coming from that, I think, than what I was getting from Netflix, to be honest. But maybe that's just me, kind of choices that kind of like come up in those algorithms. Maybe it's just my lazy eye. But,
To be fair, I've seen more and more people put Netflix under their hobbies. on different things like social media, and I just keep having to remind people that it's not a hobby. It can, like, it's a create, like, it's a distraction from the world, but it's not. I wouldn't class it as a hobby.
It's an odd one, yeah. I suppose define hobby really though. um, yeah, odd. I wouldn't put that in a hobbies bracket either. You know, I'd see hobby as something that's more active. It's a very passive. It's very passive watching TV, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think it's more of a something you can switch your brain off to. Netflix. So, in terms of your acting stuff, how has it been through COVID? Because I know, obviously, the pantomimes have been closed, the theatres have been closed. There's not been that many acting roles from what I've seen in the groups and stuff like that. Because I've tried to dabble in it myself. So, how have you been kind of looking for roles, or have you just had a break?
I I don't think any actor really ever takes a break, and it also goes hand in hand with that idea that you will never probably retire either. Um, yeah, you're right. Everything has really dried up everywhere,
Yeah,
and I mean it's only natural. I mean every industry is going through it. Look at the amount of people that are actually losing their jobs, which is, you know, it's horrific what everyone's going through. Personally, for me, um, you know, it was, I had a lot of shows cancelled. I had work cancelled. I was managing to actually get a little bit of momentum actually this year because, you know, sometimes you go through dry seasons, dry spots.
yeah,
It's part of the game, but everything got cancelled and moved around. Some things will continue to happen, I think, if we get the opportunity to. I was still looking for work, but again, it was hard for anybody putting out work there to actually make sure that it could happen.
yeah.
I did make a short movie whilst we were on lockdown, which got accepted to a few film festivals. It was just a short, 5-minute short, which was a poem that I came up with, and I did a kind of stop animation kind of live sequence and overdub thing with it, and we got a very good, well, an amazing actress to lend her voice to it.
Yeah, because I know
So
you've done a little bit directing as well, haven't you?
yeah, I love directing anything in the field really, just so as just keep the art muscle, you know, alive, because that's, I think, the problem with what everybody's going through with COVID, and a lot of people started streaming work, and in the beginning, a lot of people were streaming work for free,
Mm.
and I thought that was not necessarily a good move for them. I wouldn't have necessarily streamed my work for free. I mean, I tried other ideas out with groups of friends. I did like writing circuits with people to keep ideas flowing and just keep people, you know, like you need to go to the gym to work out. You need to work out your artistic muscle as well.
Yeah,
Um, so we kept some stuff like that going, tried to get some read throughs. I started writing more and more. Did some read throughs of that stuff, watched some other online shows that people were doing. Generally, and when the restrictions were being lifted a little bit more, people were able to put on shows and then they would stream the shows. I'm sure you've maybe taken in a few and stuff. So saw a few of those, and I liked the motivation to get on and try and find a way through all of this. Um, in fact, in August, I went to Brighton to do a show because they'd erected an outside stage because they had to cancel Brighton Fringe. So the wonderful people that run the Warren,
mm.
the awesome the awesome Nicola there, she came up with this idea. So we managed to get a few days on the stage in Brighton, which is outdoor. Everything was distance, socially distanced. Sometimes it was hard to connect the audience and so forth. So I was very lucky
Imagine.
enough to do that, take part in that, and see other people. Audiences were hard to come by actually, because I think people were still a little bit afraid, even though that everything was really well marked out and placed. It was still difficult for people to get through to all of
Yeah.
that. But you know, we persevered. We got on. We battled the elements. We did our tech in the pouring rain. It was great fun. Things came
Wow.
around, slapped us in the face. You know, all fun of the fair. But other than that, it's been really difficult to get work. And I think I've been talking to other, I've been fortunate enough to be able to get communication with some producers and some casting agents, which I think was really nice what Spotlight was doing when the first big lockdown happened. They were trying to get one-to-ones for actors with
Right.
casting directors that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise meet because, you know, they're really busy people. So all of those sort of things, and I was talking to some other acting friends, and they were trying to do the same sort of thing. So it's been about trying to take what you can out of what you can at the moment, because there is not as much as you say. There is not much out there, but
Yeah.
the
No,
rest of it,
100%.
after talking to other people, it seems to be the same game. And I think what with the politics breaking up all around us in the UK at the moment, this division kind of going on, and the separation between the upper middle class and the working class, that gulf is becoming wider, really. I think you can also see this gulf emerging between the same thing in the acting discipline as well. So those that are the haves, those upper echelons of the percentages, the gulf is emerging bigger here. If you were in work and getting work, you can see these certain practitioners are continuing to get that. Whereas I think it's harder. It's going to be even harder now, because even the people at the top of their game are going to be wanting to work as everybody does. And this was when we originally were talking, you and I, and I mentioned that for the longest time it's always been this celebrity hierarchy that kind of is achieved throughout the industry, and I always see it as a little bit of a monopoly. And there's there's stables where actors go to, i.e. their representation, and these stables are the ones that get the thoroughfare to the pole positions in the race, and as much as cream does rise to the top, it's I think opportunities in an unregulated space in the industry that we're in has a lot of questions that it really does need to answer, because we talk about mental health all of the time, and let's not disguise the issue here. There are many actors that face rejection, which will lead to depression and all these horrific kind of ways of seeing that it's just supposed to be accepted. And I think maybe it's time that we kind of looked at it a little bit with more scrutiny.
Yeah, 100%. I know that mental health is obviously a big topic at the moment. It's a big issue, especially like in the workplace and in schools. And I suppose in acting it's very different, because say if you were in a job, say like a sales job, then it's the skill set that's being like critiqued and stuff like that. But if you're an actor, it's you that's being critiqued. So I can imagine it's got a very, very big impact on your mental health when you like with the constant rejection. It's not a rejection of your skill set or a certain aspect about you, it's a rejection of you as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that we have to face up to is the way that you look. And not everybody can look like Tom Cruise or Nicole Kidman. I don't know why those two came to the list there. And there is no such thing as a bad body or a bad look. That's the sort of thing that I have always kept and stayed with. There is no such thing. But airbrushing and blah, 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 blah. All of these things kind of come into mix. I don't think it's necessarily true when you're always going up for a casting. But I think that there are stereotypes that exist. People do play or get typecast, so forth. And that's why I suppose you'd perceive some of those people as bankable, which is a term that gets thrown around a bit. But bankable, I suppose, is also just another way of going, here's the safe option, let's not take a risk, and this is primarily motivated maybe by a profit margin at the end of it, rather than the artistic license or the endeavor or the investigation. And then that rolls into everything else. So yeah, it's the question that I suppose we're rolling around with right now is many faceted and could splinter in 1,000 different places and always hit you somewhere. But it's a personal gripe of mine. And I know that I'm not alone with it. Rejection is definitely part of the job that you're going up for whenever. But there is also what is I think the question that's kind of coming more floating around at the moment is, what is the idea here with an actor's realm? Are they allowed to transform? And then when you open that can of worms, it really kind of does spill into all of these areas where you're asking, where are the lines now? The same as it goes with comedy. Where's the line? When do you push it too far? What is allowed to be perceived as a transformation? And I think we need to have the difficult conversations about this as artists, and just as humans as well. We don't have the difficult conversations, and we tiptoe around these issues, then we will not develop from them. And if we have to go through that ugly, uncomfortable phase first to come out of that tunnel, then that's what we need to do. That's what the artistic process is, and that also is being alive. Sorry.
100%. I was going to ask you as well. I've been like kind of helping out with a small documentary, which is like a paranormal investigation documentary with the company called Creative Midlands. What do you think I'm safe? Do you believe in ghosts or anything like that? What do you think?
I believe in ghosts. Uh, you know what? There was a time in my life I think I definitely believed in ghosts. I wouldn't say I would believe in ghosts now, but I do definitely believe in energies.
Right.
You know, every human being is basically a battery. They can either, you know, they'll charge you up or they'll drain you of your charge, you know, depending on who they are. And I think everything vibrates at a certain frequency, and we are left walking through these spaces that have been charged either one way or the other. So I
Wow.
wouldn't necessarily believe in ghosts, but I definitely believe in the transference of energy. Um, I mean, we're receiving it all the time. We're giving it out all of the time. You know, that's what we're really playing with. And the elasticity of space is about the transference of kinetic motions. You know, that's what we are. You know, it's like when you were saying Netflix is not really a hobby. Well, no, because we think of as hobby as being something that we activate ourselves in. Therefore, there needs to be some movement going on. You know,
Yeah.
um, although I don't know, hobbies like chess, there's not much movement with that. You could call that a hobby, and your brain is moving at the speed of light. I'm imagining. I'm not very good at chess, so just saying. But yeah, I don't know. I think you're safe. I think you're safe. Just stay away from bad energy. You know.
Yeah. 100%. So, in terms of the like the transference of energy, are you big on crystals or?
Um, Crystals, yeah, I not really. I think when I was about 12, I picked up one of those stones from one of those horoscope shops
Yeah.
where they say you've got to dip it in the sea and then let it drain by the light of the sun, and then imagine your aura being cleansed and stuff. I remember doing that as a 12, 13-year-old. I'm not sure if that
Yeah.
had any effect on me, to be quite honest with you. But hey, it was a little ritual and there's a story in that. Um, yeah, so I don't know about crystals and stuff. It's not my world. I remember
Yeah.
liking that sort of stuff and Teo and horoscopes and
What about
uh,
stuff like the law of attraction?
Laura Jackson. Yeah. I'll put my teeth back in, shall I? Yeah, I do think that that does work. Law of attraction. I think we also prime ourselves to see things that we want to see. You know, like we can develop selective hearing. We do have selective ways of seeing. You know, if people are angry, they'll continue to be angry. They'll bring more anger to them. And they'll throw out more anger. Therefore, they're bringing anger. So yeah, I say law of attraction is a thing. But if you are actively focused on looking for something, then you'll often see it, you know, unless you've dropped your keys somewhere and they're around the house and you're like, oh, you know, and then the keys won't come to you. You know,
Yeah.
somebody else will find your keys. But I'd like to practice that a lot more, the law of attraction. So I think that's a very strong mindset to constantly do it. It's like a chant or a mantra, or you
Mm.
know, and all
Like
these things are kind
affirmations.
of, yeah, ritual for ourselves. I think is it's important. You know, whatever that ritual may be. Whether it's, you know, waking up at 5 and doing 45 minutes of yoga,
Yeah.
or you know, whatever your ritual is, it's important to find whatever it is that gets you to that energy state where you want. I think that's the problem with what we're going through at the moment, is that everybody's been incarcerated only to their own rooms, and if you're vibrating at the speed of light, bouncing around one room and it's not escaping, you know, that can affect your mind. And
Yeah.
of course, it's people's minds.
One of the interviews I've done before yourself is I was talking about the collective consciousness, and how we're all connected on one plane of consciousness, and apparently it's going to get us even more down when we're all down. It's going to get us even more down because it's kind of
Yeah.
like a horrible cycle. So yeah, it feeds in perfect to what you said there. One of the things I wanted to ask you as well is about acting roles in terms of the influencers that are coming into acting. So they're using like YouTube platforms and Instagram. How are you kind of battling that? Are you feeling pressure to have more of a social media following, or?
Uh, Good question. This is a tough one. I've been struggling with this one for a very long time, actually, the social media influence. I think if you are, it depends where you are in the game. I don't want to really call it a game. I don't really like that terminology, but there's certain people that don't need any of that presence. You know, they don't need that noise or that clutter because they've already managed to break through to whatever market they want to be seen or associated with, or a certain tier. Um, I think there's a problem for me with it, whereas I really do champion theatre. I do love theatre because there's a connection in theatre that is just not rivaled with recorded media.
Right.
The performer, that is, in a selfish way, and also for the audience as well, because the fifth member, I always call them the fifth member, but the fifth member is always your audience, right?
Yeah.
And I think with social media and streaming and content like that, I think it's important to understand what it is that's meant by it, number one, and what it is that's being offered. So I look at commercials and I think, is that acting? Or how would I define it now? Because if we're going to become more specific about any sort of noun for anything that we do, then we have to get specific about everything. So often I look at commercials, and there's some really good ones out there. I often like the ones that, Christmas time inspired, the beautiful narratives that are about bringing people together. But most of the time, a commercial is there to offer you a product, to convince you to, invest in a product.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is a car salesmanship that we're watching on TV when it comes to this line of acting, because that for me is selling. You're selling something, and if you're not, I don't suppose you'd be doing that job, because nobody's going to ask you to do something where they want you to sell their product. You're not able to sell the product.
Yeah.
So for me, I look at that and I think, well, I've never wanted to get into the commercial world. I don't particularly want to sell that product. I don't really want to sell products. I want to share and tell stories,
Right.
and characters and create. Whereas, so for me, I separate that off and I call that modeling with movement. That's how I bracket that one off. So when it comes to things like social media and so forth, I think Instagram and Instagram as a platform, as a picture sharing platform, is pretty cool in the fact that pictures, you can tell narrative and stories in form of. It doesn't just have to be product display. As much as it is also a social. Hey, look at that yummy lunch that my mother has had on the road. So I like that, and I think if it can, it's up to the individual. But as an artist, because I suppose that's what you're asking me. Then if I can tell some stories with it, then I'll play around with it. I think Facebook for me has become something more of a broadcast space than it was just a connection space before, in the terms that now, the algorithms that work on Facebook, you'd be looking up something one time and then all of a sudden everything floats in and you're like, whoa, what are you doing? And also I don't really talk to people on Facebook like I do in real life. We all do the same thing, right? And there's this second life that we're all being given at the moment. And I can see its upward use in times when we're restricted from our social mobility with one another. But there is harm and consequence to all of these things. There's pros and cons to everything, and I think everything in moderation, okay. But for Facebook now, I don't really see it as a space where I really have deep, meaningful sort of these connections with people. I usually use it now for looking at other people that are associated with groups that in investigations that I'm curious about, which has been lovely to see some more people that I would never have really known about before. In that way, it's amazing. But in other ways, I think Facebook has changed all of our lives, some of it for the better, some of it for the worse. But there's a lot within social media where it forces people to compare. There's a lot of comparison going on. Oh, that person's got that. It's the Joneses next door job, and sometimes comparison can be the death of joy. Wanting what you don't realize you wanted until you've seen something, or and these mind games that social media can play on people. I tend to stay off of it rather than be on it, because I'm susceptible to it, and we all look in the mirror at least once every week, and sometimes we don't like what we see. And the less of that I have in my life, the less reason I have to resent myself. Personally, I champion it or I welcome it, because any other excuses, on top of everything that gets in the way, because we do set ourselves up for this. Everything that we surround ourselves with, we've got to be prepared for it to come at us one way or another, And I suppose talking to some other colleagues and workmates over the last, this whole year, really, it's been this whole year, isn't it, that we've just been kind of like squished. you know, there's a lot of people are going through a lot of self-reflection, and maybe it's good for us to do that. I just worry that by the time that this whole thing kind of begins to peter out a little bit more, and let's hope it does sooner rather than later, that we don't forget some of the things that we have managed to find in this time, like people's absolute convictions for being vocal about things that actually really do matter, rather than the things that kind of just get a lot of coverage or airspace, or people taking up more habitual recycling regimes or crafting at home. One of my friends the other day sent me a picture of her looming. I was like, wow, see the loom ever. That's awesome stuff. But people are picking up these things and trying new things. The amount of people that have started painting canvases at home and now sharing their work, like, right, brilliant. Like, who said that you couldn't before? You just maybe didn't have the time to let yourself get bored enough to go, actually, I can do this. So boredom is a bloody good thing, you know?
Yeah.
I hope we don't lose all of this when we come out and go, oh, quick, somebody turn the lights back on. Let's burn up more electricity, you know?
I read an article earlier this year that this year more home-based businesses have been registered than any other year. So you're right there. People are just finding new ways. They don't want to go back to work and they want a permanent furlough. So I think, I think that people are trying to find more creative ways to earn money from home.
But I think it's, you know, if you can and put your mind to it, go for it. I think there's potentially another sustainability idea in there somewhere that's going to meet another look ahead. If all of these businesses open, everybody's their boss, you know, who doing the other work that really also needs to be done.
Yeah.
Personally, I've had to take up any kind of employment that I can find to survive, which is, you know, nothing to do with what my vocation for life is, and that's just the way it is. I've heard people's sob stories about not getting any help from government at all. Some people with valid excuses, other people not so much. You know, I think we all need to take a real good look at things and see what it is that's in this. What is it that we need to survive? How much does it cost for a person to live? You know, what is comfortable compared to somebody next door that is on the street, for instance, or you know, like the question of cutting the charity, the aid bill that we send overseas. You know, it's like when we start having questions like that and we start cutting things that really make a difference, and you've got to ask questions, haven't you? I mean, right now I'm doing to keep my mind busy as well. I've started looking at City Lit courses. So I'm doing some courses with City Lit, which have just opened up my channels of thinking. Right now I'm really interested in the Industrial Revolution and everything that was happening at the time, and what it meant for us as a society. Because I totally, as an artist, I'm lucky enough to be an artist, but I'm not what you'd call I'm not, you know, I'm not living the life of luxury by any means. You know, I'm still working class. You know, everything about me is still in the working class route. You know, I don't have a strong accent, which is actually to my, it works against me rather than does for me, you know. And I don't know how I got onto this ramble.
It's okay.
But yeah, I've forgotten what the question was now I was trying to answer.
Well, yeah, we're coming up to a half an hour window, so I think I'll just ask some questions from our live audience, if that's okay. So there's a lady called Jessica on here that wants to know if you are single.
No, I am not, unfortunately, Jessica.
Or Jessica.
I was always a Jessica Rabbit fan. Beautiful name.
So there's another one is what advice would you give to somebody that's just started out in acting or wanted maybe a career change, just to kind of paraphrase?
I'd be decisive about exactly what you think you want from it. And if you are looking at training, then again, you need to ask a very specific question. What is it that you want to do? Do you see yourself as, you know, I can't say presenter or things like that, because I don't see them in the world of acting. You know, I see transformation and storytelling in the world of acting. Yeah. So when it comes to all of those things, I'm not the person with any information really there. I've got this empty vacuous melon on my neck. But if you are interested, I would take in some classes, maybe start small to get a taste and see how you take to it. Maybe there's some amateur dramatic societies near you, which is the way that I got into it when I was about 8, 6, 7,
Wow.
8. And then from there you can build. If you want to go and train, there's courses that you can do in all of the theatre schools in London. Most of them do summer courses. Of course, you don't have to just stay with that. I mean, obviously we're restricted right now, but then it depends what you want to do. You want to look at theatre, then go specifically to theatre. You want to go for recorded media. Do you want to work in radio? Taking something that's appealing to you, where you think you might like. Go and try a little bit of it out first, because not everything is for everyone. I like chocolate trifle. I don't like fruit in my cakes. So, I won't go out and buy a fruit cake really that much,
Yeah.
unless it's got nothing against them. I just prefer a cake being, less fruity.
Makes sense. I think I'm the same. I prefer chocolate over fruit.
Yeah.
So, what would be your earliest memory of wanting to act?
Earliest memory of wanting to act. Well, I can tell you my earliest memory of not wanting to act. I suppose is not an answer to your question, but then it did later fuel me to want to act. I didn't speak as a kid for many years, and my mother sent me to this lovely old lady that was confined to a wheelchair. She sent me and my sister to this lady because my sister was born with a disability, and because of subsequent strokes, it affected the way that she'd speak. And now I wouldn't speak hardly at all because I always wanted my sister to be more vocal. And I was just in awe of my sister all the time. I'm very lucky to have her for the amount of time we did on this planet. And she sent us to this lady, and she would get us to remember poems and present these poems to help us. And I always remember hating it, hating getting up and having to spout this poetry in front of these people in this weird 60s decor room with all of these lava lamps everywhere, and this woman, with these funny kind of smells, and all of these other kids that like hardly anybody spoke to each other anyway, so they were all in the right place trying to talk good. But I remember not liking it. But then I don't know what changed. I think it was a few years later I saw a friend in a pantomime, and he just looked like he was having the time of his life. And I was always performing at home after like 6 or 7. It just sort of kind of came out of nowhere, I suppose. And I saw my friend having a great time, and I was like, well, fun. That's what I want. I want to have fun. And then that's how I kind of got into it. And I ended up going to Sylvia Young's for a while, and took in some amateur dramatic societies where I was based in Havering. And that's how I got into it. Met some wonderful people, and the fun kind of just didn't stop, And it was always, I think, what I love about the craft of acting and everything that goes within it, before and behind the scenes, is that you are always trying to utilize your skills to find the truth of something new. And that means you really have to work consistently to get through to those points. So it's like relearning and re-educating yourself every time you come at something.
Can imagine.
The problem is, having the opportunity to do it, and there are closed shops, and I think that's every working or jobbing actor's frustration, is that sometimes there is none of these paths are clear, but some of these paths are very well hidden, or there's a restricted access panel just scuppered over, the horse gate.
Yeah.
And that's the frustration, because I think if everybody loves what they do, right? If you don't love what you do, then you're not doing the right thing, obviously. But when you are consistently restricted from doing, these things, then this horrible tension the body remembers, and we can get into ruts. I mean, even Olivier, the great Olivier, depending on which way you want to view him, remarked that he got stage fright later in his career when he was stepping
later
on.
in his career.
Yeah, when he was aged into his career, he developed stage fright, and he said how horrific it was for him. And you can imagine if something that you've trusted and loved your whole life, or something comes up, this cold, frosty front, and you're like, what a horrible feeling. What a horrible feeling to have that unwelcome visitor, which is basically self-doubt. I read a theory that suggested that we only become frightened of the stage or these situations because of not because we're afraid, but we're ashamed for some reason. So it's about understanding where that shame comes from. Well, you're just asking for truth constantly, aren't you? You're just drilling so far down into that core. But that's the game. That's the aim of the game. So if you are going to go out and you are interested in it, and you do have to kind of, the best way of looking at it is that bit in Star Wars. And I know that the chap that played Darth Vader,
Oh, really?
he passed away today, didn't he?
I haven't seen that.
Not James Earl Jones, but the chap that was actually Darth Vader. I've forgotten his name. I feel quite awful about that now. But there's that scene in Star Wars, isn't he, where Luke confronts himself and he slices off the head of Darth Vader in this smoke and mirrors scene, and all of a sudden it reveals that it's himself, And I suppose that's why Star Wars is so good. It speaks to all of us on so many levels, I don't mind saying I love Star Wars. Love it bits. In fact, I think John Boyega is doing a great, he's on TV tonight, isn't he? I think he's on pretty soon. Small Axe, I think he's on tonight. Kind of looking forward to watching that. I just rambled again. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Yeah. Have you? Where can people find you on social media? Because I think we're coming up to the end now. Lee.
There you go. Yeah, you're back. Or you paused for a second there.
So, where can people find you on social media?
Well, on social media, I'm me on Facebook, but I'm on Instagram. I don't use it a hell of a lot right now because I don't really have too much to share, and I don't want to put out the really bad food that I make. But I'm on Instagram under Mr. Lee Arty. Because I couldn't get my name, so I had to come up with something really pretentious and awful. So, Mr. Lee Arty, that's where I'm at the moment. I will one day probably try and change it, but I don't know how you do that on Instagram. I'm not that smart. I'm on there. I'm on Twitter as well as Lee White, Lee R. White, I think. Perfect. That's it. Yep.
No problem. So yeah, appreciate it. Well, I'll let you go. But have you got any final messages to the audience, or?
No, just if you're interested in doing something, go and do it. And if you can't find anything right now, YouTube it. And then, you know what? There are some great tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I think that's where it really comes into its own.
Appreciate
it. After this, it should show us all that really, if we don't do today what we wanted to do tomorrow, it might not be bloody possible. So if you can get out today, go and take a good punt,
Beautiful. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
You too. Thank you very much for having us. Well, I wish you well and safety for you and everybody.
Yeah, appreciate it.